everyone, welcome back to Christ Center Ironworks. Today I'm going to be taking you through the process of showing you how to make this ugly thing called the swab. Pretty handy if you have a coal forge at keeping your coal kind of wet and tamped down. I'll show you in the video what it's used for later on. If you notice this leaf, if you watched the leaf video of doing the full form leaf, I went ahead and turned this into the end, and we're going to turn this into a swab. And what I'm going to be doing with this is I'm actually just going to be giving it away. As most of everybody knows that has subscribed to me any long, for any point of time, I have a website called blacksmithpds.com. There's a link, we'll put a link in the description to that website where I sell power hammer plans and plans of all sorts, and also a bunch of free downloads that you can download right there from the website. Pretty convenient resource, or at least I hope it will be for blacksmiths, for both the beginner and the intermediate and advanced smiths alike. But I'm actually going to be giving this away, and I just draw a random name from whoever subscribes to my newsletter over there. So make sure to go check that out. Enough of that. Let's get busy, and hope you guys enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. Alrighty. So the first step in making a swab is knowing what it's used for, clearly. What you do with a swab is you take and you dip this in your quench tank to get your rag wet. This is just a piece of terry cloth towel that was wore out that I used on, I forget what it was some grease and stuff that I had. I ended up, by the time I've dipped it so many times, most of that's ran off. And I just use it to take and cool the fire now. So, the point of a swab. So, I have dipper cans, and I've used dipper cans for years. Dipper cans have one big drawback. I have a cast iron fire pot. And with a cast iron fire pot, as you can tell, it's probably really hot since the forge is nice and heated up here. And one of the main drawbacks to dipper cans like this, it could be anything, it could be an open top can, is that once you get this thing full, you can accidentally douse too much water onto the sides of your fire to try to maintain your fire. And that will actually run down onto the fire pot and crack it. Which, if you know anything about the expense of having to buy a newly manufactured fire pot, they ain't cheap. So, that's not something you want to do too much. I am the editor of my club's newsletter. Just a little backdrop there. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of SOFA, or Southern Ohio Forge and Anvil. But I've been up there on multiple occasions. I've taught lots of classes there. And one thing that they highly discourage, for that reason that I just went over with you there, is that no dipper cans are allowed. So this way, no one can end up cracking the fire pots. Well, what's the downside to that? Well, the downside to that is say you're just cranking away and you're getting a good fire going here, and and like a lot of new guys do, they pile a lot of fire on, and they get their fire all broken up here. Maybe you're still new to fire management. And look at all this coal that's burning here. That's unnecessary. You don't need all this heat coming out of your fire pot here to heat a 3/8 inch rod. It's kind of ridiculous, really. You're just burning all this excess coal out here. It is turning to breeze and then eventually to coke. But it's doing that prematurely. You want it in your fire pot when it's coke. You don't want it to coke out here and turn to ash. It's just a big waste. So, the benefit of a swab is you can take, and I'll dip it here in the water, you can come along the sides of your fire and dribble just enough water to dampen the flames. If you see how that happens there, I just go right on around here. Hell, I can even dampen them from the top of the fire pot and not get any water. I can quelt some of those flames down there and not get any water now down in the fire pot and take a risk of cracking it. So it is kind of a bit cumbersome at times, it wants to drag coal around maybe. I use a dab method. I know some guys will wad it up and use it to push coal around. I haven't found that handy. I just use a rake. But that's in principle what you're doing. You're just keeping this wet. And at times, say I got a problem area that always seems to want to catch fire and just burn needlessly, I'll just lay that rag right on there like that. And keep an eye on it that you don't eventually dry it out to the point that it catches fire. But you know, that will smother out the flames and won't allow your flames to grow too big. So that's the principal point of a swab. Of course, we got to go somewhere from just having a straight bar, and we've got to have a way of attaching that. That's where the forging is going to come in. We are going to take and forge this out. We're going to draw this out into a taper, and then we're going to kind of pigtail and scroll it all up and do some stuff with it. And then I'll show you how that works when we actually insert the rag to it, and then we'll actually use it in one of these next clips. So the next clip, I'm going to be at the anvil. I'll have this heated up, and we're going to draw it out. And then and we'll just keep going on from there. Hopefully I can keep this to being a fairly short video for you. Hope you guys are liking it so far. And we'll see if this is one of the tools that you guys want to add to your arsenal at your own home forges. I have found it handy, so much so in the fact that I don't even hardly use my dipper can anymore, except to cool off select areas of mild steel. So next clip, we'll be forging. Alrighty everyone, as most people know, I like to use the horn to draw out my material. I try to work at the thickest portion of the horn when I draw out. I do not approve forging way out here. There's just not enough support in this. I'm fortunate enough to have a fairly large anvil, and so the base of my horn is quite supportive of the drawing out process. So we're going to bring this piece out, and I'm going to set it just on this radius here and start working down my taper to begin with. You want to have a nice hot heat when you're doing this, and use good solid blows to draw this work out. Hit turning. So we want this tip to be fairly thin. So that's what we're going to do first. One of the things I like to do is I like to get my tip to where I want to be. And then I work on drawing the rest of the material. So you can tell I'm picking up a little bit of pace there. I try to draw the rest of the material down to that point. It allows for you to create a pretty even asymmetrical taper all the way to the tip and fine tip points. So we're going to straighten that up a fuzz. I'll take another heat on it now. Since I've already got the tip where I want it, I'm not going to focus my heat in here anymore. I'm going to push that past the center of the fire and try to heat up just back in here and get a little more draw out. But you can see how quickly that horn really helps draw that material down quickly. So I'll take another heat on this, and we will draw it out a little bit more. And go from there. Alright, we got this second heat here. I'm just going to continue as before, drawing down my material down to the tip, creating a very nice, long, asymmetrical taper. Work a little softer once you get out to that thinner material. Just draw it through the hammer and the horn like a pair of power hammer guys. That helps draw this out nice and even. All I'm really doing here is just kind of smoothing it up a little bit, just for my own taste. But pretty much the drawing is done. So I pretty much have about a 5-inch or so, maybe 4.5, 4 3/4, somewhere around there, long taper on this. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually leave this square. Reason for that being is to say we rounded it all up nice and smooth, like it will have a much harder time gripping the rag when we thread it up on here to turn this into our swab. So I actually like to not smooth this too much, leave it a little lumpy bumpy. That's all great. That's what we want to do. So next heat here, I'll heat all this up, and we will start making this into a pigtail first, and then I'll show you how that works out and how that'll actually transpire into becoming the swab. So we're almost there, guys. That's a pretty quick project once you've done your leaf bit or whatever finial you want. I didn't show that in this video too long. You know, you can just make this a simple hoop, whatever tickles your fancy. I like things in my shop to look kind of pretty or kind of like I know what I'm doing. Once again, kinda. Anyhow, it just looks more aesthetically pleasing. It's fun. It feels good in the hand. And so just something to think about. If you're not that good at making leaves or whatever just yet, then just turn this into a simple loop and draw a taper. And that's perfectly fine if you're just beginning. And so I'm going to start showing you how I roll this up into a pigtail. Hopefully I'll get another little shot a little closer in, so this way you guys can see what's actually transpiring and taking place in this. And that'll be the next shot. And here we go. So before I take and do this, I want to be real clear about something. We aren't going to take and be hitting or forming on the tip of the anvil here. We are actually going to just be tapping or using essentially the tip of the horn of the anvil here to form or bend our piece of material around. We are not coming down and making contact with the tip. That's a real good way of breaking off a tip, or otherwise, you know, starting to get a little bit of a beak kind of drooping down on you and things like that. This particular anvil back here actually has a high carbon steel faceplate welded in on the top of this horn. This is all forged anvil. It's a German anvil, and it's solid forged steel, which makes it a great anvil. I'm not sure what anvil you guys will be working with, whether you're working with a cast iron anvil or a cast steel anvil or whatever, or just maybe even a wrought iron, maybe a mouse hole or something, or a Peter Wright. But it is generally a bad practice to try to take and actually do forging on the tip of the anvil. I'll use the horn, or think of the horn as a forming tool more than a forging tool. That's just a quick tip to just prolong the longevity of your anvils. But we're going to pull this out, and what we're going to actually start is we're going to start by making our bend at the base of that taper, or the largest section of that taper first. And then we are going to slowly wrap this thing up all the way out to the finest part. And you'll see why that's imperative here in a moment, and I'll go over that as I forge. So here we go. I get this nice and hot here, so I've got a good heat on it. So we're going to start at this base. We're doing it on the square sides, and we're just going to bend this around. As you can see, I'm not hitting against the anvil. Okay? All I'm doing is using the anvil as a forming tool. And that's all you should be doing. So we're going to tuck that back around. And so essentially, if you can see how this is looking now, you don't have to be real pretty with this. Once again, most of this won't ever get seen. I'm just trying not to go off camera here, otherwise I would have went to the flat of the anvil and some other spots to kind of clean that up. But if you'd see that first little curlicue, that's what we made. And so all we're going to do is we're going to continue this process of wrapping this on around. I got it a little tight in here. That's okay. I'll probably just freehand it from here. But if you would have started out here at the tip and start rolling it up, what you would have a problem with is constantly distorting this loop. By starting with the thinnest material and trying to bend the largest material, you create an issue of the thinner material wanting to give way before the thicker material will move. So in an operation like this, depending on what you've got going on, it is easier to bend the thicker cross-section of material first and then finish off with your finer piece of material. This holds true too, like if you're doing decorative little vine work, or this pretty much holds true everything except for scrolls. Scrolls, you'll start with the tip and always roll out larger and larger. But any type of organic work or fine work, or where you've got long drawn out tapers, it is always easier to start your bend for creating pigtails like this at the thickest portion of the bar stop. So hope that little tip helps there. So I'm going to heat this up. I'll just go ahead and keep scrolling it up, and we'll go from there. All right, here's our second heat, and I'm going to use the horn as pretty much a backing up tool for bending this on around. As you can see, I'm causing this thing to spin around and do exactly what I want it to do without actually forging it against the anvil. And that's what you want. So we're just curling that up, give it a nice little tuck, just like a pigtail. So that's all tucked in there nice. Just give it a little brush here, doesn't hurt. We're gonna get it all scaly again, but give it a little butcher block brush here. But this is what we're wanting essentially. So now we've got this all pulled up together. I'll show you what our next step's going to be, and I'm actually going to use a pair of scrolling tongs. If you do not have a pair of scrolling tongs, a cheap method, and I was actually showed this by a guy by the name of Tom Wolf, and I'm not sure where he picked it up from. It might have been YouTube somewhere. He pretty much took one of these long needle nose pliers from Harbor Freight actually. And then all he did was pretty much just grind the tips and round it off the jaws, so this way, you know, it wouldn't leave any marks. And he uses these for doing scroll work and stuff. He was actually in a class where I taught how to make roses, and he brought these to class and shared them with me, and actually gave me this set. So just shout out to Tom Wolf for that. Great guy of our club there. But anyways, I'm going to be using scrolling tongs, and we'll heat this up, and I'll show you how that looks and what we're trying to accomplish with this. And then we'll go to threading on the swab, and we'll test it out and see how it works. Here we go. Now that you got your little pigtail heated up, what you want to do is you just want to grab that and pull. Pull it straight out. And then back here you might have to bite on it and force it out, especially if you got a pair of thin scrolling tongs like so. And you just want to pull this out and make it gnarly, kind of like a corkscrew. Consequently, this is how I make corkscrews. You can make them fairly even and whatnot, with not too bad of a deal. But anyways, this is what we do with this. It's not a hard job. You just want to adjust your loops until you get this whole thing out looking like a corkscrew. And I think you guys can pretty well guess what we're going to be doing with that to take and thread that on there. So I probably won't show the threading on. I'll just put it on there just to shorten the video a little bit. We're going to go ahead and give this a wire brush again. Clean it up. You want to let this cool fairly naturally. You don't want to take and get this, you don't want to try to harden it or anything, you know. Well, I use scrap steel a lot. I do use new steel, so I just got in a habit years ago since using stuff from the scrap yard. You never really can tell the carbon content in some of this stuff or what it's exactly made of. Sure, it's mild steel, they say, but until it's not mild steel. And then you've just wasted a half hour on a project or 45 minutes to find out something wasn't mild steel at all. So what I did there is I actually just gave that a little back curl. That'll stop the rag from coming back out. And I'll just thread it on there and wad it up. And you know what? Why not? I'll just go ahead and show you guys that process as well once this is cooled down sufficiently. But as you can see, that's what we're looking for right there. I think it makes a pretty little element just like that. Don't know what you would use that for. Anywho, the forging's done. So next step, I'll go ahead and show you how I wad up this rag on here and hook this up. We'll go to the bench for that. And then we'll use it to forge. Appreciate you guys sticking around and watching this. Alright, here we are at a bench. And yes, you're right. As you can tell, this is a dirty old rag. Promise I've only used it to clean off, you know, parts from the forge and things after, you know, just dry them off after I've cooled things down. You get to get this if you win the competition. So lucky you. You know, if you subscribe to that newsletter like I was telling you about. In fact, well, maybe this isn't too big of a sell point for that. Anywho, somebody will want this dirty old thing. Anyhow, so it's a pretty simple method to take and thread this on here, as most guys could probably surmise. You can start from any old place. I like to start from the center of the rag, just as if you picked it up here. And hopefully I'm getting this on camera, and I'm going to try to look at it here real quick. No, I'm completely off camera. Alright, so let me pull it back here a little bit. See if you guys can see that. Alright, you can see it there. So essentially all I do is I just pick up a piece of fabric here, and I just hook that little hook through there. No particular order, just push it on through the rag. Terry cloth is nice for this, but you pretty much get it through to where it's threaded through just like so. Make sure this is still in shot. Yep. Okay. So, and I'll take that first poke through it, and I'll take it all the way up to the base to where it's on the main shank of the rod now. So, that's my first step that I do. Then the next step is I'll just take a little bit from somewhere else and poke it through, kind of like pinched up a piece, and shove it on there. And then I'll find another part of it, maybe back here from up the shank a little bit, somewhere around in here, whatever will work nice, and just kind of hook that through as well. That's the reason for the little hook on the end. It just aids in wadding this piece up on there, so this way it doesn't go nowhere. But once those are all hooked on there, and that's where that little curly cue coming back like that is, it won't allow these to come back off. You can pull all this over the top now, and now you have something that's not going anywhere. You've got that swab. Oop, flip that off the table. It's getting late, so it's probably 8:30, 9 o'clock at night right now. It's not going anywhere. So, you know, it's locked on there. It's slipped down a little bit because of that. If you do find that it's slipped down too much for your liking, just flip this open and just feed a little more on. You know, hook it back through a few other spots. Don't have to be, you know, real poetic with it. It's just a real simple thing here. I could probably fool with this for an hour on the camera to get it to stay. It's not meant to stay on there forever, so it is meant to be changed out if you need it. So just keep that in mind. So this isn't like a forever deal, you know, where you just hook it on there and it's just going to want to stay there happily ever after. You know, it's a rag, it's going to move around, it's going to fall to pieces, you'll have to put a new rag on it. But anyways, that's how it's done. So we'll take this over to the forge now, and I'll show you how that works, and again show you it working, and hope you guys like this video. Once again, I'll be giving this away to one lucky subscriber to my newsletter over at blacksmithpdfs.com. Hope you guys have a blessed day, and we'll catch you later.